Our source of information these days is hopelessly complex. TV, radio, Facebook, the internet, email, and newspapers have fallen out of favor. Many have shut down or resorted to a couple of papers of packaging around a whole thick bundle of paid advertising. But through all of this, the Eganville Leader continued to shine through a straight talking friend with factual data on news and events in our area. Eganville is a community of about 1,300 people. But yet the Leader has a circulation of probably approximately 6,000 every week. Not everybody in Eganville buys a paper for every member of the family, so you can imagine how far the paper goes. The largest paid circulation of any community newspaper in Ontario. It's annually recognized as best in class in National Newspaper Awards. Again this year, Gerald. In 2002, the Leader produced a 945-page book to commemorate its 100th anniversary. Features stories of historical interest. This reflection of a century has sold more than 8,000 copies. There's still a few copies for sale. I'm not sure if Gerald has them in his car, but we have a few here. The Upper Ottawa Valley Genealogical Group partnered with the Leader to create and publish an index to this 945-page book. And it's available for sale as well. That way you don't have to go all the way through 945 pages to realize that your relatives are actually there. Our speaker today has been the heart and soul and leader of the Leader for the past 50 plus years. He is nationally recognized for his efforts and had all of us holding our breath as the future of the newspaper seemed to be hanging by a thread. But in true Gerald Tracey fashion, he pulled it off on yet another miracle. And the Leader lived on under new leadership. Gerald has also been the pulsing heart of his community throughout his career. His endless energy and fundraising efforts have resulted in a new assisted living retirement home in Eganville called Fairfield, thank you. A Centennial Park along the Bonachère that the community has recently renamed in his honor. The rebuilding of St. James Church after the disastrous fires of 1997, and his championing and board leadership at Hospice Renfrew. UOVGG is proud to be able to bring to you today the living local legend, Mr. Gerald Tracey. Gerald. I'm just going to mic you for Gerald. Just going for that. Oh, there you go. Anything you say or do will be heard and paid.
What kind of a meeting will I have here? Hi, Barry. That's my name. That's good. Everybody else, some I met, some I haven't met. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about today. I phoned Fred Blackstein on the way up, and I told him where I was coming and what I was doing. And Fred said, "Well, he said I would suggest you just open up with the big book, Bible we call it, open up to any page, and there's likely a story there. And there's a wealth of stories in the Bible. That's what a lot of people called it because it was kind of a little thick to read in a day or two. So some folks leave it on their table and they'll read a page or two a day, like they would do with the Bible. This project was probably the largest undertaking for myself and their staff. Like, I can't believe what we did when this was starting out as it was for our 100th anniversary. So our idea was to take the top story from each year from 1902 ahead 100 years. So we would have about a 100-page book with one top story for each year. But when we got into the file and we saw what was in there, it was just like unbelievable material, especially in the early days, say up to the 1940s. In the days before photography, the way stories were written, and you could almost put yourself at the scene of some of the tragedies that were reported on. The boy that drowned in the Muskrat River after the canoe flipped, and just the way the wording of the stories, you could put yourself there. Much different style of writing than today, of course. So we produced 9,000 copies of this, 9,200 actually, and we're down to less than 200. I always said I hope that I live long enough that the last book is sold, so that we don't have to worry about maybe a reprinting, because I wouldn't even want to venture to guess what a reprinting of this would cost today. Back in 2002, the cost was $125,000 print the 9,200 books, and they were done on a press in Ottawa, and they were delivered to Eganville in 260-foot tractor trailers. Never thought of that. Where we want to put 2 tractor loads of books. Oh, thankfully, the late great Harry Searson had this wonderful building in Eganville that became the first home to the ambulance service when it was established in Eganville. And they had moved to the new municipal hall, so it freed up a bay in the Harry building. So we were able to store the books there until we started getting them out and selling them. And the book generated a lot of money. It probably generated $500,000 in sales. And now I kind of wish I had kept that. But we took the profits of the book, and we gave them to Pembroke Regional Hospital. We gave it to Redmond Victoria Hospital. We gave it to libraries, some fire departments, places where we felt that needed the support, but where everybody in that region benefited from the service of the funding. So we were selective. We wanted to get the best bang for the dollar. So all of the proceeds basically from the early sales went back into community facilities. Now the last few books that are sold just goes into everyday sales that I don't own any, that I have no right to anymore, because we sold the paper, as you know, maybe I think at the end of February it became official. And the decision to sell the paper was it was a big decision. I made it in February 2025 when I was in the Heart Institute in Ottawa. It was my second trip to the Heart Institute. I was there 15 years ago. Had a triple. Well, I got to tell you this story now that beyond this here. So I've had a funeral in Renfrew. The late great Les McNulty. And if you didn't know Les, he was quite a character from around Adamston, Bromley. He managed to hide in the bushes when Tommy Gibbons shot the Fitzmaurice brothers. I think it was 1946, outside Douglas on the road, the Stone Road, I guess. And Leslie was 12 years old, and he watched Thomas Gibbons shoot the Fitzmaurice brothers on their sleighs. They were returning from working in the bush. And I think it was just one of those Hatfield McCoy neighborly disputes that shouldn't cross my land. And so anyway, Leslie escaped that, and Leslie had a few other brushes with death in his colorful life. So when Leslie died in July 2015, it was my intention to go to the funeral, do a story on Les's life, because he had an interesting life, and it was one I felt should have been told. Another one of his escapades was he broke a leg when he was logging in the bush, and I think he crawled 2 miles out, dragging one leg out in the winter to get medical help. So anyway, I go down to Renfrew, and as I'm going down to Renfrew on a Thursday, I start getting some discomfort in my chest, and right away I blamed the Mennonites. Why would I blame the Mennonites? Because they had nice, fresh green onions, and I love green onions and homemade bread. And the night before, I had a lot of onions and whole wheat bread. So I'm thinking, what that does to you sometimes. I've had pain like that, or indigestion. So I went to the funeral home, Glad's funeral home, went to the wake, went over to Our Lady Fatima Church, and they were doing construction around the church. So you had to park in the backyard, and kind of frustrating, especially when you weren't feeling too good. And then I was waiting for the funeral procession to arrive at the church, and I said to the caretaker, he was doing some work out front. I jokingly said, "Do you have your cell phone on you?" He said, "Yeah, why?" I said, "Well, if I drop," I said, "call 911, please." And I was just joking. I had no idea what was in store for me. So then funeral arrives, everybody gets into the church, and I hop in the back pew because I just wasn't too sure how long I was going to be able to stay in church. And by God, during the homily or the sermon, whatever you want to call it, Father Ryan Holly was speaking, and I said to this guy beside me, he was from Hindford, John Wren. I said, "John, do you have your cell phone on you?" He said, "Yeah, why?" I said, "Call 911. I said, "I think I'm taking a heart attack." So that was my journey. Anyway, we got over to Renton Victoria Hospital, and I'm on the table in the ER, and who do I see? I look up and there's Barry Green. In here. Well, Barry has connections, eventually. He probably said he was my father or something.
I was a priest.
Yeah. Oh. Like it, he goes with the priest, come to give you last grace. Anyway, I said, Barry, I said, "You get my camera, you get over to the cemetery and get the pictures. Don't worry about me." So that's what happened. So we did. The pictures weren't the best, but we got by.
I'll tell you what happened during when they were putting poor Leslie into the ground. You had asked me to take a picture, and I thought, well, I'll take a nice shot of the whole ensemble, Les and the crowd. So I backed away from the grave site. I'm maybe 50 yards away. I got a nice, and the camera you had is one of those cameras that goes click, click. In the middle of them putting Leslie into the ground, and I thought, well, I'll get a picture of that. And I push the button, click, click. Everything stops and everybody looks around. What made that noise? I'm standing there with the camera. A few of Leslie's relatives didn't appreciate me being there, but nice story, Gerald. You've got a great memory.
Well, that's a true story. So anyway, that was a surprise because I was pretty healthy all along. But anyway, all I required is a couple of stents. So I thought, well, I'll get the stents in and I'll get out. And the doctor said no. He said, "You're not going anywhere. We discovered you have a 95% blockage. You're lucky that you had a heart attack, or you wouldn't be around. And within a year, you were going to hit the ground." And I kind of believed them because my younger brother hit the ground 5 months before me. He was dropped at age 57. So, and the sad part is, like, none of our parents or grandparents had any heart problems, but our family, all 5 of us, had a problem with the heart of one kind or another. But anyway, then fast forward to last February, and I wake up one Saturday morning with indigestion. My crew blaming on the onions because it was in February, and I was supposed to go to Oakville that morning, and it was 1:30 in the morning, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to get too excited. I'm going to see if this indigestion goes away. It usually does in a half an hour, but it didn't, and it didn't, and it didn't, and by 5:30 or 6, I thought, "I'll call the paramedics now." I didn't want to call the late house. So I called them, and I said, "You guys are going to tell me if I'm going south to Oakville or east to Ottawa or Renfrew." They said, you're going to Renfrew, and then I knew that I'd be going to Ottawa, but I didn't know what the problem was. But it was a heart issue, and I ended up having to get a pacemaker. But my heart rate had dropped for down to 20, whatever, 20-25, and he kept waking me up and asking me if I was okay. And he said, "I am," until he wake me up. Why? Look, the heart rate dropped. You shouldn't be talking to us. I said, "Well, I am talking to you, and I feel good, so I can go back to sleep now." But anyway, we got a pacemaker for you. But anyway, I'm lying in bed there for a couple of days in Ottawa, and I said, this is 2 brushes, too close calls. And that was just with the heart. I had a few other instances where I shouldn't survive, as many of us have. And I said, I got to start making some plans. So I said, I'm going to sell the paper or close it in 1 year. And why I chose a year was because subscriptions are paid in advance, and I was not going to pay everybody back 30, 40, 50 bucks, whatever was owing on the paper. So we'll just let them all run out. If a buyer comes along, great. Well, no buyer was coming along. I did have the paper sold 2 years before that, and it was a great deal. Everything was going really well. But the person who was buying it didn't really have any plans for staff or anything like that. And I just felt uneasy. And I always said, it's not about the money. I want to make sure that the paper, if it is sold, it's sold to someone who put it left in good hands. And this person who was buying, he just didn't have a plan that I felt comfortable with. So I backed out of that. And fast forward 2 years, at the 11th hour in Christmas, this past Christmas, I actually had a guy from London, England. He worked for Conrad Black in his newspaper chain. He put an offer in to buy the paper, and we were just about to go to the lawyers, sign the papers, and he got bad news from his oncologist about a cancer diagnosis. So that put the skids on that. And that was pretty interesting how a guy from London, England, who had worked with the Black chain all his life, would want to buy Eganville Leader. And this guy, he was the lawyer and publisher. He was publisher of the Chicago Tribune, the London Daily Telegraph. He wasn't lacking for money. He wasn't lacking for intelligence. He kind of knew what he was doing. And how, you wonder how you get connected with people like that, but it's amazing. I guess in this world of communication, internet and everything today, the word gets around, and he was gung ho to buy the paper, and he had plans, and then all of it fell apart because of his health situation. So then it got down to 2 weeks before closing time, and this fella from around Toronto who had always loved the paper, and he got into the newspaper buying business back in 2008. He bought his first newspapers, and he always admired Eganville Leader. He always said it was the best paper in Canada. And every time he would buy a newspaper, he did a lot of bailouts, he rescued a lot of papers, or bought a lot of family papers out, like myself, where we were aging out. So every time he would buy a paper, he would always subscribe to the Leader to send to the paper that he just bought, kind of encouraging his people to sort of follow the style or follow the recipe, because he knew our paper was successful. So he bought the paper named Grace Stanton. I think he has 45 newspapers now, but newspapers is just a small part of his portfolio. He's in the student university housing and 6,000 university housing rentals, and radio stations and telecommunications companies and things like that. Everybody asks me, a lot of people ask me, how are the new bosses? And I really don't know. I haven't seen them since we signed the deal. But Ray turned around and then sold 50% to this guy from Aylmer, Ontario, who I was selling to 2 years ago. And I said, why would you do that? And he said, well, he really wanted your paper. And he says, I just want to keep peace among everybody, so I'm going to bring him in 50%. So I guess I have two bosses now, whom I never see. And I hope I don't, because after 54 years on my own, I've never had a boss except my wife. And that's enough. One boss is enough. Can you imagine, like, after 54 years of being your boss, being your own boss? I have a boss now. So anyway, they'll call me, and I just sort of say, look, things are going well. Won't bother me. We got a paper together. I did agree to stay on for 2 years. 25 hours a week is the deal. So I always tease them. I said, would you like the 25 hours Monday, Tuesday, or can I spread it out over the week? Or because I said, it's not really working out too well. And I don't know what'll happen in the future, but the nice part about when I sold it, it felt like a load was lifted off my back. And the reason for that is, and I say this respectfully, I can now die and I don't burden my wife with the dealing with the estate and all that nonsense, because she always said, like, if you die, I'm just going down to turn the lock and door because I don't know anything about the newspaper business. And she's being honest, she was a teacher. So at least that's off the shelf for her, off the table. She doesn't have to worry about that. What happens after I decide to go, I don't know. Everybody knows how difficult it is to get good people today. It's a struggle. I deal with a lot of small businesses every day, and that's the number one challenge being in business today, to get people who will work. I was in a store in Barry Bay, the largest grocery store in Barry Bay last week, and the woman who's running it right now, she said the long weekend in Barry Bay, there were 4 of them in the store. And this is, it's the independent grocery store. 4 people to run that on a long weekend, and if you get to Barry Bay on a long weekend in May, it's booming. I said, how in the name of God did you do it? She couldn't, like, I couldn't believe it that 4 people could actually do that. But that's the choice you have, because nobody wants to work weekends anymore, and we want to have the free time, and they want 4 days a week. I'm babbling. So the leader started in 1902. Paddy McHugh. He was a brother-in-law of the late father Patrick Sylvester Dowd, who built the magnificent old St. James Church in Eganville. And prior to Paddy starting the Leader, there were always 2 newspapers in Eganville until the Great Fire of 1911. But when Paddy came to Eganville, he started working in the office, I think it was Eganville Enterprise, and it was owned by a non-Catholic. Protestants, we call them, right? And of course, Father Dowdall was the parish priest in Eganville, and he was a pretty powerful priest. He was quite well known across Ontario. His obituary is in 1927, very colorful, worth reading. But Father Dowdall said to his brother-in-law, Paddy, this town needs a Catholic organ, Catholic media. So I think the Catholic Church probably funded the start of the Eganville Leader. Anyways, after the fire of 1911, both newspapers were destroyed in the fire, and only the Leader rose from the ashes after the fire. My family got involved in the business in 1944. My father and his brother purchased paper in May 1944, and back then it was letterpress, hot metal. 8 pages was the regular size of the edition. A big paper was 12 pages, and you got 12 pages in the months of October, November, when the new cars were released. The new Oldsmobiles, the new Fords, the new Chevrolets, all these big boats that, Dave Limke collects today. Yeah, so when the fall came along, we were getting these beautiful big ads from the car companies. And back then, every year the car style changed, not like today. You can buy the same vehicle for the last 12 years, but there's no really change. The only change is the price tag, right? I joined the business in 1971, and my older brother Ron was already in the business. He left the school and got into the business with my father. My father died in 1968 at the age of 55. He was an asthmatic sufferer. And we lived on John Street in Eganville. That's familiar with Eganville. It's the street our office is located on. But anyway, there used to be a big town hall on John Street where the post office is today, and our house was just down the street from it. And one night my father took an asthmatic attack behind the wheel of his car in front of the house, and it was hit the gas pedal And the car didn't stop until it hit the town hall about 800 feet west. So he lingered in the Ottawa General Hospital for a month before he eventually succumbed to his injuries. So that was tough. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. Of course, she inherited the business, but my older brother Ron had been in the business by then probably 10 years with my father. So he kept the paper going, and we all growing up, just like on a farm, all the kids had their roles. Like I was a linotype operator when I was in grade 5. I was learning the big press in grade 8, getting covered with black ink and driving like for Mother Tracey when we get home from work, and all your clothes were ruined with printer's ink. Not bright enough to put the apron on, even though they were hanging on the wall. I went to Ottawa High School, and I returned for my grade 13, and my first class was English, and my teacher was going to be Preston O'Grady. Preston and Kathleen O'Grady were longtime English teachers in Eganville. Excellent teachers, and I knew they were demanding of their students. So I took a look at Preston, and the clock said 9:20, 9:20. I took a look, and I said to myself, I don't think Mr. O'Grady and I are going to make it through the year. So I put my hand up and I said, Mr. O'Grady, may I be excused? He said, yes. So I went to the office and I cashed my books in. Back then you had books, not a Chromebook. And Patricia O'Gorman, bless her soul, she was a secretary back then. She was married to Tom O'Gorman from Pine Valley. Gerald, where do you go? You can't quit school. You got to stay at school. And I said, no. I said, I think I got to go back to the office. I walk into the office and my brother looks at me. What are you doing here? You should be at school. I said, I think I belong here. And you need me more than they need you. So together we put our nose to the grindstone. We got out of the old hot metal, lead printing, got into the new offset printing, and we gradually built the paper. I think the circulation back then was 2,500 thereabouts, still 8 pages. So we grew the paper slowly, and it peaked at about 6,500 circulation. And I remember the boom years of the 80s, early 90s. Some weeks we were running 34 pages. That's the gravy years, in the business. Today your count is anywhere from 20 to 24 different times. Back then every community had a newspaper. I remember coming into the Observer, there used to be 60 people working down on Alexander Street. The types are checking away. The upstairs with the editorial and advertising. Downstairs, Eddie Beaupre and Doug Horn and the boys are checking away, building the ads. Now there's two people at the Observer. Anthony Dixon, the editor, and one person that's talking the circulation. Unbelievable. Renfrew, no newspaper. Aaron Pryor, no newspaper. Cobden, well, you gotta say, Deep River, Barry Bay, and Eganville are the only ones with community newspapers. And then Pembroke has Flyer on, right? And I feel so bad because the Observer was a good paper in its day. It gave you the news of the day, whatever happened in the area. It covered the news well. Will there ever be a paper in Pembroke again? I don't know. I know that a paper are starting up across Ontario. There were so many that closed in the from 2000 to 2023. Metroland, for instance, that had bought out all of the Runge papers and so many others. They closed 70 papers 5 years ago. Yeah, 70 papers gone off the. Post media is always closing papers, and I think at the peak there were 450 community newspapers that belonged to the Ontario Association. and it fell to around 200. That's the lowest end. Now the count is back up to the 220, and new ones are opening slowly, gradually. But then one of the biggest challenges with that is where do you get printed? At one time, there used to be 3 plants, printing plants for Renfrew County alone. Now we can in Montreal. When you think of it, there's, I think there's maybe 8 printing plants left in Ontario, all of Ontario, and that includes like wherever the Citizen was printed now. I don't know, even know if they have the presses going in Ottawa anymore. We could have went there to print, but I was warned by a former staff, they said Post Media sold the printing, the Citizen building along the Queensway, and it was just renting space, so it didn't sound like they were going to maybe keep their printing plant for too long, so I don't even know if it's still functioning or not, or if they've contracted out their printing. And Citizen used to print like 125,000 copies a day. Now they're down to 12,000 max. And it's pretty thin during the week. It'll quicker on the weekend. And it used to be a lot of reading in the Saturday Citizen. You could spend the afternoon with your bodies. Now, sad to say, the highlight of the Ottawa Citizen on Saturday is the 8 pages of obituaries.
And the Crawfords.
And the concerts appear in the broad Citizen. But yeah, it doesn't take too long. You'll do it. And we did the book. We have no idea how you would do an index, something like this. Plus, we were right down to the wire. It took a year to go through all of the files, glean the information we wanted, get the photos we wanted, and this was done after hours because we still had a paper to put out during the day. So my routine would be to come home and from work, and after supper by 7 o'clock, if there wasn't an event or a council meeting to go to that night, I would head down to the rec room where I had the microfilms and the files, and I would go through them until depending what you came across, sometimes 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and then we get a couple hours sleep and go back and work in the regular edition. And if I didn't go downstairs to do the research, my kids would look at me and say, "Dad, you're not going down to the dungeon to do some research." I can remember my son and I think he was maybe 14 at the time, we were driving to Florida one March break, and he and I are in the back when the wife is driving, and we proofread all the way down. From here, it shortened the drive. Can you imagine, like, some of the sacrifices? He became a pretty good reader. Yeah. But I mean, it had to be proofread, right? Because human error, everything is typeset back then, and it was being input, so you didn't want to make too many mistakes. Few mistakes jump out at me that I noticed over the years, but not anybody else noticed it. But when someone from the society or the society called me and said, "This lady from Sudbury, has done an index with the reflections of the century," I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it, and apparently she had no connection to the valley, like no connection to Eganville, no connection to Pembroke, no connection, and she indexed everything all of it was the 60 some pages. And this is the great, like this, the book is great, but to me, when we're doing, well, let's say Barry Green passes away, and I got to write a nice obituary for Barry, I remember doing a story on Barry, was it 1993, or it's all up there, and then someone clicks. Well, geez, let's check the index. I still have to stop and I do it the long way. Sometimes I'll do it the long way and say, "Well, geez, it's right there. It's in the paper," or if it was kind of important, it's likely in here. Sister Rosenda Brady, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, but she was an excellent person, and she did so much in the Barry Bay area with Valley Manor and St. Francis Memorial Hospital, and just a wonderful, wonderful woman. And oh God, I get 100 stories of her over her career. Yeah, I think in 1977, Valley Manor was built when we were going through the divide. That's in here. So it's valuable. If you don't have one and you have the Bible, it's a good reference one.
You up for some questions, Gerald?
Yeah, I think I have it because I'm boring everybody.
I'm gonna wander here because I've got a microphone.
Okay.
Okay, so let me start you off, Gerald. You made a lot of money selling papers. Most of them had a fire in them.
Yeah, on the front page?
Yeah.
Anybody notice this week's front page?
Fire.
Yeah,
What?
a fire.
What else?
Accidents.
Well,
Accidents.
no, but this week's front page on the May, what was Monday? May 20th paper.
There's a lady with a
Yes.
flower.
Very good. Okay, so our the top story, the main story. There's no headline. You know what that is?
You know, listen.
Only one person has sent me a text. I'm trying to be nice. I haven't responded yet. I like to say, well, we put something in for everybody and you just won a prize, but she'd hold me to the prize. But it was a corruption with the PDF. Like the heading was on the page. It was on the page. And when I looked at the paper Wednesday morning, there's no headline. So I said to the gal, when we make our PDFs, each page is checked. She said, well, it was there when I looked at it before we went to the printing class. I said, well, yeah, everybody saw it. But it disappeared. It just disappeared. So I have no idea. So I thought, well, maybe it got deleted off the page layout. So I opened up the page layout. Well, no, the headline is still there. So anyway.
What's the headline?
Wildfire closes Highway 17. Okay? That's the headline. Well, I don't know if I should just stay quiet about it, but I put something in the paper next week. Because I thought, oh my God, the phone is going to be ringing off the hook. But no, you don't. And I put the paper out and I said, notice something different about the paper today? No. Nice picture of what Dave just said, the woman. I couldn't believe it. So I always thought people read headlines only. But as you noticed it, eh?
Right away.
Now, what did you think?
Well. What happened?
Okay. Because usually, I mean, there's a lot of experts out there and they're quick to pull it up. Like, you misspelled cat, but like it's really, it gets kind of.
Just put in a big article about how there's a headline thief.
Well, I've been playing with the idea, yeah, we were having a contest, but we forgot to announce it. You write the headline anyway. But I must say, in 124 years, that's the first time it's ever happened. So the
first time there has been a fire on the front page.
Okay, so you got to so people will say, how come you always have an accident or a fire on the front page? You know what my answer is?
Sales papers.
You demand it. You demand it.
Yeah.
If I put a picture, I can guarantee you the picture of the lady with the art things. It's a nice picture. Clear. Right? But if that picture, now if we would have had a wreck or a fire, like the jet fuel explosion 2 weeks ago, people are going to put curiosity. So people always, that's my answer. You demand it. Yeah. And how I know that is I'll bring more papers back Wednesday when the new ones go out with the lady on the front page with the nice piece of art than we did with the jet fuel explosion. So that's all I can say. If it bleeds, it leads, they say in the industry.
Yeah. Other questions? Right here, yes.
In view of the fact that a lot of papers closing, how has Eganville Leader managed to survive? What's your secret?
That's a good question because I have several publishers who will come to visit or they'll send people to come and talk to me, what's your secret? And there's no secret. It's, let's just say maybe it's like, Butler Chabot, Charlie Butler, who sold 1,000 cars a year. What was his secret? He worked it. Compared to the guy down the street who maybe pulled up at 5 o'clock and went home. I just say, give the people a reason to pick up the paper, and the reason is cover what's happening in their community. I mean, I can do it easy. I can do it the easy way, like your weekly observer, and this isn't a slight against Anthony. I can put in press releases only. You know, we get enough material from the hospital foundations, the hospitals, the county, 100 groups are always sending out news releases. And today it's so easy to attach a JPEG. You can sit in the office and fill a paper with news releases. Give them a new lead, which is, I mean, yes, we use news releases because a lot of them are important. And every organization has a communications officer now, which has really kind of hurt our industry too, because they've sucked out a lot of good reporters from the system. And if you're working for a community newspaper or the Observer for $50,000 a year in the county of Renfrew, or the regional hospital is offering you 75 or 80,000 with benefits and 4 weeks holidays, what are you going to take, right? So that's a challenge for us. But basically, the secret is just to try to give the people what they want. Yeah, good reading material.
Right, so here, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. Since the newspaper seems to be declining, has online increased? Are people reading the paper via online more?
Well, all of the daily newspapers are pretty well. That's the only thing that's keeping them
Yeah.
alive. But you have to do such a volume of, I think your advertising revenue is based on the number of clicks you're getting on your site and all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Globe and Mail and New York Times, they're going to get a lot of clicks, so they're going to do okay that way. But for a small community newspaper, you know, to get enough clicks to warrant
Yeah.
sufficient revenue from the ad agencies, it's difficult. Now, we have maybe 600 online
Okay.
readers,
Yeah.
and that's basically due to Canada Post. Because if you're outside Renfrew County,
That's what I was thinking, further away, people
Yes.
from the valley may want to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, like we have a guy in Australia, yeah, the paper 9:30, well, yeah, that's 9:30 at night there, but yeah, we have a few like in Ireland, Australia, and it's nice that they can, you know, forget at the same time or before anybody else. But once the paper goes outside Renfrew County, if you're living in Ottawa, it can take anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks. There's no rhyme or reason, like I just wish they wouldn't deliver it in 2 days, because it shows they can do it in 2 days. You know, some people actually have it Friday and they'll pull and say, "We've got our paper on Friday." I said, "Oh God." I said, Canada Post has put themselves in a mess now.
Yeah.
And it shows they can do it, so why is it 2 weeks?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because I have some relatives that used to subscribe to the Renfrew paper that lived abroad.
Yes.
And when that folded, they were very sad. There was no way to kind of keep up with the news from where they grew up.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, and like especially all the obituaries and things like that. You're going, Barry, I think you were.
He did a good job touching all the different little communities around too. Douglas being one of them, where every week there was some story in there and pertains to Douglas, Einford, Eganville, wherever.
Well, all the
But
little
the-
communities that are forgotten, right?
One of the most important things is your obituary column. They're the best in the country.
You know, now you mean like the design?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know what? That has turned out to be a cash cow. We always lamented that. You remember classified advertising?
Yeah.
Like there used to be like in the Citizen, there used to be like 12, 14 pages of classifieds. There are none anymore. Everything is, what do they call these sites there? Like timber cells or rental cells or.
Marketplace.
Market. I'm not a social, I don't know anything about social media. Not, I just don't have time. So I sit in front of a computer all day, so I don't want to sit at night. But, yeah, we thought, oh my God, how are we gonna survive without these $10 class my dad's? So you're at the office and a guy comes in, a piece of paper. Oh, that's on the floor. For my grocery list after. Guy comes in with a piece of paper and he'll stand at the counter and my girl was standing there who I paid $30 an hour to. Okay, I got an Alice Chalmers single disc guitar. It's got a 1954 Massey Ferguson. I think it's a Massey Ferguson. And like a half an hour later, you've got his $10. But that's hard to look at. So, you know, and then you gotta put that $10 ad, you gotta lay out that $10 ad, then you gotta provide space for that $10 ad. So back in the days, back about 10 years ago, one of my gals did an obituary up with somebody, and that there was a time when obituaries were free. And that was in the days, if you were a good writer, you could write a flowery obituary, and it could take like half a page. Oh, geez.
That's why you want to buy the books.
So anyway, one of my gals did up a beautiful obituary layout, colorful flowers all around, a nice border. And it costs money. You charge the person for it. And that started off the days of obituaries being paid for. So now it's it is the best revenue generating means for our newspaper anyway. And people like the way we design them, and instead of just a one column thing with a headshot. Yeah, so yeah. Somebody says, well, you must feel bad. And I said, well, no, I feel like an undertaker. I don't see any of them going around. I guess it's just cost of doing business, right? But anyway, yeah, so that has certainly become a new generating stream of income for us.
And none of us are getting out of here alive.
You got it. That's right. Right, what's below your book there? You brought a books in with you.
Oh, I brought up
Right under the book.
Right under the
here.
Do you want to say anything about those?
Yeah, I brought these up when they're here. I brought up a couple packages. These were genealogical extracts from 1902 to 1913, 1914 to 1921, and 1922 to 1927. And this was something the late Carol Bennett McQuaig did from Renfrew. She went through all of the files in the Mercury and did the same down in Renfrew, and she went through the files of Eganville Leader, recording the births and deaths. And there's an index with everyone here. So if your name is Conahan, there's references on page 18, 32, and 70. So either you died or you were born or you're mentioned as a brother-in-law or a son. So I brought these up. It takes you up to 1927. If everybody here, I guess, is in the genealogy. I don't know if they'll be of any use, but there's a copy for everybody there if you want one.
Yeah, we have some on the shelf, but we'll gladly.
You know, if you need more, somehow when Carol died 8 years ago, and the daughter who had not from here anymore, had really no interest in all of her files. She said, "What would you like?" I said, "What have you got?" So she had tons of these books. God, she had tons of them, like stacks like that. So I said, "Well, I'll take those." You know, there's always somebody looking for them, and once they're gone, right? Because I've been through our files right now, and I'm in 1967. Sometimes at night, I just go through the PDFs and I'm looking for something. I'm looking for a needle in the haystack. Somebody will phone up and say, "Can you find my uncle's obituary from 1963? Or what month?" "Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what month." "Are you sure it's 1963? "Well, I think it's 1960. Okay. So I kind of just put those off to the side, and then if there's nothing interesting going on TV or in stormy night, I'll open up the PDFs and I'll start going through and it's amazing what you can find, you know, okay, there's that little picture and then you can look for and then you find other stuff that, oh God, I heard about that. But I think I've gone through our files from 1902 to the current 4 times in my life. And you always find something else that you forgot about or didn't see before. And there's a lot of interesting things that happens in Renfrew County, and I'm sure they were not all reported in the Eganville Leader because, I mean, they're fire on their paper, actually, you know, the main events, we certainly are most of them recorded, but, yeah, a lot of unbelievable things have happened.
One last question. Wait, you mentioned earlier that the microfiche. Did you keep those microfiche yourself when you sold the paper? Or did they go with the paper?
Everything is still in Eganville the way it was. Yeah.
And where is it open to the public? You look at the microfiches?
No.
You have them here?
I
Okay.
have microfilm.
Film, okay. Yeah, microfilms, okay.
Yeah, so what I can do probably is I can sometimes download our PDFs onto a stick and bring them in the PDFs because it's a lot easier than, right, with microfilm.
Right.
I had a company we were microfilmed right up to 1979, back when Ontario was around, there were grants being given out, so we were able to get our files microfilmed up to 1979. So, maybe 10 years ago, I found a company in Montreal that could take the microfilm and convert them into PDFs. The problem is they didn't do a really good job, and I didn't know until you get into the microfilms. Some of the lines of type are cracked, you don't get the whole thing. But it's amazing if you put your cursor over it. I do a lot of copy and paste whole columns on it. You know, retight them all right. It'll bring those words out. It's amazing. Yeah. Some might have some queer characters, but the gist is there. You know what it is. But that's something I would like to do, Larry, is get you the PDFs because I want people to have access to that, but I can't have them coming into the office because the first thing, I'm a nice guy, so I want to show you how to run this computer. No, I want to use site, right? So I got to show you how to do it. So that takes up my time, which throws everybody else
We'll
off.
certainly have a conversation about that.
Yeah,
It's good to hear because the history of the Eganville Leader is something sought after.
Well, the history of the county, Renfrew County, like it's a fascinating place. When I think back to the plowing match in 1994, Freddie Blackfeet plowing match, we did 200. I think it was a 220-page tabloid edition after the plowing match. Yeah, and we put it out we put it out Wednesday. I don't know how in the name of God we did that. And I left the site Saturday inebriated to boot. Because it was a good party.
I think everybody was.
And I don't know how in the name of God we got that depressed.
Coffee might have been stronger back then.
There was no coffee there. And then the other thing we did for Eganville Centennial in 1991, we did a 220-page, 8-section edition of the history of Eganville. Had to be mad. Insane.
Ones you have to do for Christmas.
Well, they're small in comparison. But those were in the days when I was a bad boy. Like, you know?
We need to draw this to regretfully we can draw it to a close. You may want to hang around and just let some people tease you a little bit.
No,
After the fact.
I don't think I've enjoyed I'm not a public speaker. I can sit and converse with Barry and Dave and anybody else, but like I said, if you came to hear anything intelligent, you're not going to hear it from me.
And you've got a grocery list.
I haven't gone through it.
Well, our appreciation for presenting today, and you are a very entertaining speaker.
Not entertaining. Thank you very much.
Stories are great.
Great. Hey, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So that wraps up our presentation for today. And thank you for all the people that are here and for the people that are on Zoom. We will be releasing the Zoom tape for your friends and relatives if they missed it. It'll be on YouTube later in the week or within a week.